Simply allow the vibration of the mantra Om to nourish each and every single cell in your body. Feel the expansiveness of your breath simply from chanting. The pointedness of your attention. The clarity. And the spaciousness. It's through that simple mantra we access the natural state, our natural state of meditation. The natural state of meditation is that state of awareness. It's also called Turiya. The state that all the other states, waking, sleeping, dream state, arise and dissolve into. And it's through the practice of Swadhyaya, self-observation, we begin to attune to that natural state. We begin to know that we are that. So it's through Swadhyaya that we start to clear away the leaves of this, the self-image, all the identifications, the roles, even the sleep state, the waking state, and the dream state, to recognize our true nature. That is the state of meditation, the natural state. So as you're ready, allow your eyes to open. Jai Bhagwan, welcome, welcome. It's so good to be back after a month for Satsang. And I mentioned last time we were together that it's getting a little more comfortable offering this Satsang with you and sitting together and exploring and investigating these different teachings and how they show up in our day-to-day life, making some sense out of the teachings and the scriptures. And I want to remind myself, as well as all of you, that I'm here for me. That this is simply another opportunity for me to review, to read, to study, to anchor what I've received so that it deepens that knowing and that knowledge and remembering. And as we point to Swadhyaya tonight, we were talking earlier about meditation and the experience of meditation where we sit and focus on something, and then we begin to see some gap. And that gap that we're looking at, or that we realize, is that natural state of meditation. And as we sit and meditate more and more, that gap grows, and we begin to realize that that gap is actually always there, that it actually is, the spaciousness is constantly present. Well, we can't see it because it's covered with all kinds of other things that are kind of blinding us from remembering. So that the practice of Swadhyaya is actually to stop looking out there for something and go, oh, let me turn around and look in here. So I begin to unpack, kind of pull the leaves away, the layers away, so I can begin to realize my true nature. That is, that's natural state of meditation. So it's a bit of a investigation and exploration. And I have some readings here that I would like to share with you. The first one is from Babaji, Swami Kripalu, and I'll just show you the book. This is one of my favorite. It's the Lost Darshans, I think it is, Sunrise of Joy. And he has a whole darshan on Swadhyaya. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. But what he said is Swadhyaya is the study of the soul. And he breaks it down to Swadhyaya is listening to, contemplating, and practicing the principles of the scriptures, the true scriptures, practicing meditation and chanting. Chanting the name of the divine. So Swa means self, or Atman, or soul. And Adhyaya means to study. So simply to study the soul. So how do we get to know the soul? So we have all of these beautiful pointings through the scriptures, through the teachings, called the Vedas and other scriptures. Veda means knowledge, but it's not just ordinary knowledge like what we intellectually understand. It's knowledge that is seen through that natural state of meditation. Some of the other scriptures that you can investigate, these teachings and this knowing or study of the soul, are the Upanishads. Various darshans of yoga masters and smritis, the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, and the Ramayana. So practicing self-study involves searching for the meaning behind the scriptural passages. So the reason why we're gathering and we're using the scriptures is because they are the eternal truth. And so going right to the source of the scriptures and kind of like chewing through them and peeling them away points right to that eternal truth. There are many self-help books out there, but they're still shrouded by various interpretations. And when we go right to the horse's mouth of a yoga master, right, a swami, otherwise known as a saint, then we have the opportunity to go right to the very foundation of these teachings. The piece that's really important is that these teachings are not like, well, someone tells me what they are and then I go, oh, that's it, right? I have to find out for myself. So I really want to clarify that all of the satsangs that we have together and any of the time that we spend together, don't believe what I say, as Chandrakant would say. Go and test it out for yourself. Investigate it for yourself. Find out for yourself. That's Swadhyaya. And then you'll know. You'll have knowledge and experience. So I'm just going to go just a little bit further in this. It says, the scriptures give us intellectual answers to questions like, who is the self? Who created the universe? How was the universe created? But they cannot give us the experience of the great masters. For that, we must travel within, to the gap, to that natural state of meditation, into the depths of our soul through sadhana. Again, sadhana is that state of meditation. Since knowledge is within us and ignorance is outside of us, we must purify our body and mind in order to attain this knowledge. So last time we talked about purification processes, kind of life as being a yogi. And so some of that we talked about is how you begin your sadhana, your day-to-day living, right? So purifying your body through different types of practices, purifying your mind, your heart, all these aspects of yourself, so that then you have the capacity to actually move into and see and stay longer that state of meditation. And it's there that the clear thinking happens, that clear seeing happens. Okay. I'm going to read a little bit from what Gurudev wrote in the Yoga of Relationships, and I know some of you brought this with you. Okay. And we're on chapter 6. So for our friends that are joining us, you're welcome to follow along.
What page?
Page 43. And if you have a book and the person next to you doesn't, you're welcome to share. So self-awareness is the chapter 6. Self-improvement without self-awareness is self-torture. Awareness is double-ended. It comes at us from both directions, and like a boomerang, we send it out only for it to return. Self-observation is 360-degree operation. We cannot be fully in a relationship with another until we know ourselves. To experience self-actualization, we must drop all identification, all perceptions, all expectations, all prejudice, and demands. We must be in touch with what we are actually experiencing in the moment. And again, this points back to last time we were together, we're talking about what is it to be a yogi? What's a life of a yogi? And we pointed back to being in the present moment. Where is the only place that I exist right now? Just right now, here, now. So as we walk our life and kind of uncover these teachings and have a deeper understanding of them, we have that sadhana, right? And bringing forth these teachings of what it is to be a yogi and realize that it only happens now. So that self-observation is happening right now, every moment, right? Gurudev calls it the turnaround technique. Okay? He says, I don't know if it says in this book, but that's one of his terms, is like the turnaround technique. It's not out there, it's actually in here. So see what's happening now, right? Our tendency is to look at, our thoughts. Our tendency is to look at, our emotions. And one of the pieces that I just read was that drop your expectations, which show up in the form of thought. Emotions also are usually pre-programmed from past experiences or projections of the future. And demands, right? So all of those things are either past or future, and they're not present in the now. So when we're present in the now, we can let go of, all kinds of things that don't matter without any filters, and we can embrace life of what's happening right now. So self-discovery is only possible through paying close attention and becoming deeply aware of what we are experiencing without distortions. And those distortions are those past programmed reactions from the past, and the projections and the expectation and demand of the future, or the imagination of the future. So the only place that yoga happens is now. So as a yogi, we're in the now. And when we catch ourselves being in the past or the future, the sadhana is coming back to now, and that's that Swadhyaya, that's that investigation, what's happening now. So we have sensation in the body, we have breath in the body, and that actually will attune us to what's happening now. And as we pay attention to what's happening now through that self-investigation, we can go, oh, I feel something in my left shoulder, or I feel a little flutter in my abdomen, or I feel something in my heart center, or I feel some contraction in my throat. And then we can peel back the layers of that even and just be with that raw sensation and notice what happens. we can get caught in our projections, our demands, our expectations, and notice that too. Because remember, it's practice, 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 practice. It's okay, it's all okay. Every time you realize that you've kind of gone into the past or into the future and you got stuck in something, you just come back to the center, come back to now. And the more often you do that, the easier it will become, and the longer you can stay in that now, which is that gap, which is that natural state of meditation, which grows and grows and grows and grows, simply by bringing your attention there. Is that making sense? So self-sourcing really never begins until we make a paradigm shift from developing the personal security of I am, that ego I am, to recognizing who I am. So the journey starts when we realize we are not our concepts or the individualized self-image. And somebody recently was using a different term. Instead of individualized self-image, that contracted sense of self. And that contracted sense of self is when we actually forget who we are, the essence of our true nature, and we actually become identified with our small self or our ego, or that self-image that points to I am Marnie, I'm a mother, I am a yoga teacher, I own a yoga studio, I'm a person in the community. All these roles, a daughter, a sister, all these roles that we play, right? And we get identified with that. So as we turn the page to page 44, you'll see there's a little writing and it says, I am not the thought I am thinking. I am not the emotion I am feeling. I am not the sensation in my body. Because I am not my thoughts, my emotions, or my body, I am untouched, unaffected, and independent from the drama I call life. From the TV show, from the movie screen of life. And again, we get caught sometimes believing that we are all of that. And that's human nature, actually. It's biological. So this Swadhyaya is to remind us of the soul that exists before we come into form. That is Atman, that is like that constant, universal, unchanging, timeless essence. So again, the more we cultivate the knowing of that or remembering of that, the more we can abide in that place. And that becomes that is that natural state of meditation. Eyes open or eyes closed. We don't have to sit like this. Once we start connecting to it, we can actually connect it with our eyes open. So, not long ago, I was speaking with Gurudev, and he gave me an example. And what he said to me is, he says, don't judge. And what he meant for himself, and pointing back to me, he said, if you judge, then you automatically come out of that sense of connection to source, right? Because you're now externalizing. There's a demand, there's an expectation, there's a criticism, there's a contracted sense of self, right? So every time you catch yourself judging, he said, turn it around, come back, because you've disconnected from the source within. So come back. Come back to the source within. Withdraw your outgoing attention and come back. Come back to breath, come back to the sensations in the body, and then even then know that you're not the breath, you're not the sensations. So that was direct from Gurudev. So every time you catch yourself judging, you just realize that you've disconnected from source. So whether it's judgment or criticism or, and it's not even outside of yourself, it might be criticism of yourself. It might be judging yourself, judging your contracted sense of self. So when that happens, you know that you're disconnected from the divine that you are, that you've actually got caught believing that you're that small contracted self when you're not. So just a little further down, it says self-awareness begins with the mirror, okay? So the mirror is the folks that we are in a relationship with. They are the mirror. So when I find myself judging, I'm not judging the other person. It's actually, I'm rejecting something inside of myself, and it looks like it's over there. Okay? It's observed through the witness. So I'm watching. I'm observing all the outplay through the practice and the techniques of meditation or concentration to help me rest back as that witness. And it's all integrated through Swadhyaya, knowing the essence of who I truly am and that self-investigation. So do you guys have any questions? Just checking.
I don't have a question, but more a comment.
Sure.
Because for a very, very long time, I would get caught up in the judgment of myself, of others, but really it's of myself.
Right.
And being very hard on myself because I wasn't perfect.
Right.
Oh, darn it. But what I've noticed recently, and I think Gurudev points to this at the back when he makes a description of the niyamas. What I've noticed recently is instead of judgment, it's become more of a curiosity. Just, look at that.
What is that?
Yes. And that in itself creates a lightness, almost a playfulness around it. So it's less of a judgment, but just just noticing it and just allowing it, just noticing it without
Needing it to be different.
Needing
right?
it to be different or getting hung up on it. And when I was preparing to come tonight, when I was reading this, there was Guruji pointed to that by saying something about in the beginning we notice really only our faults and our inferior qualities, which is why we must always observe ourselves without judgment. By and by we begin to notice good qualities as well. By focusing less on lower characteristics, the higher ones occur more naturally and with more frequency. And I thought that was really beautiful.
It is really beautiful.
Yeah.
What we focus on expands. So if we put our attention to those faults, right, and we can allow ourselves to be entrenched there, that's what we see. But as we cultivate that knowing of that state of meditation, we're leaning back a little bit, and then we're also learning how to witness and observe, and we see those other attributes that we have.
And that's really helpful, that the way you described it, of what we put our attention on expands.
Exactly. So that comes back to that life of a yogi. We can, whatever we want, we can put we're free. I'll read to you another quote, actually, that's at the end of this same chapter. You have complete freedom to choose what you do. Complete freedom, you're totally free. You have no freedom to choose the results of what you do, right? Because that is not up for our discernment, right? If you value the results for what they are, whatever happens, right? So if you make no judgment on the results, you just appreciate them, the blessings that they are, they then become prasad. Prasad is that gift from the masters, a blessing. So it's perfect because the more we focus on what we want to, if we focus on the good aspects of ourselves, that our attention goes there, and then we'll become more and more and more naturally that way. Just as if we focus on the parts of ourselves that are not so positive, we'll become more and more like that, right? So just turn your attention to what's positive. Use your affirmations, your intentions. Point in the direction that you want to go, as opposed to where you don't want to go. So what happens sometimes is we actually, as I was mentioning, we judge or we criticize ourselves for being a certain way. So we're actually resisting a part of ourselves. But when we just allow it to be, for example, somebody I was with recently, they were disappointed about something. And instead of getting entrenched and entangled in the disappointment, they said, oh, disappointment is moving through, right? Because you know it's not going to stay forever. So it comes, moves through, they watched it, and then it dissipated. It may have taken a day or 2 days, but it eventually passed through, right? Same with excitement. You're going on a holiday to Hawaii. You know, you're excited to go, and you go there, and you're excited, and the excitement comes, and it passes through. Next thing you know, you're home, and the holiday's done. And all that's left is the memory of it, right? It's the same thing. You focus on expanse. Mm-hmm. So continue looking at page 44. When we point to that, the mirror. In a loving relationship, everything we encounter in the other is a direct reflection of who we are. And I'm just going to actually change that to, in any relationship, everything we encounter in the other is a direct reflection of who we are. It shows us all we need to know and what we resist most in ourselves. So when we are in disharmony with the other, it is not so much the other we disapprove of, but it's actually the unattractive traits we see in ourselves reflected in the other's behavior. So it appears like it's happening over there, but it's actually a reflection of something that I'm rejecting in myself. So another example is that blaming others is throwing something at them for revealing to us ourselves. But not our true selves, it's our self-image self. So when we get really mad at someone and go, you did this and you did that, and we're throwing something at them, they're actually just because they've revealed to us something about ourselves that we didn't want to see or we rejected. So that is what I mean by prasad. You can take it as a delicious morsel of something wonderful and yummy, or you can take it as a piece of poo, basically, right? You can choose to receive it with gratitude or with disdain. It's up to you. We all have that freedom. If we use the mirror correctly, love for the other person becomes self-love. Acceptance of the other becomes self-acceptance. And unless we take responsibility, we will never change the source of our unhappiness. Unless we take responsibility, we will never change the source of our unhappiness. We only continue to make more problems in the name of solving them. And here's a beautiful quote from Swami Kripalu. The key that unlocks our own heart is locked in the heart of another. So when we see someone else who has that contracted sense of self, right, we can go, oh yeah, poor them, they're struggling, they're suffering. And there's like a separation. But no, it's actually, they're showing us our own contracted sense of self. So that love and compassion for them allows us to have love and compassion for ourselves. Right? And so it's this beautiful gift, and that's the prasad, that's the beautiful exchange that we receive. In that investigation, the study of the soul, Swadhyaya. Do you have any questions?
I have sort of I think it's a comment.
Yeah.
I don't think it hasn't been said, I think I just finally heard it, where, often we see the person as a mirror, and I'm at that point where I understand that it can be a reflection of me, and even the things that I dislike, but hearing you say it as that more being a part of my self-image that I don't like, as opposed to that being me.
Right.
That was like the thing that I just got at this moment, where that is still not me, and that's where there was like a rejection of it still, even though I understood that was part of me, quote, but now I realize it's a part of the image of me, still not me, which really just sunk in really deeply. And
Beautiful.
yeah. And I know I've heard that before, but I just got it. Yeah. So that just makes it, makes sense now to utilize that particular tool in another way now.
I feel a sense of empowerment and freedom in that knowing.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I can acceptance in it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Any other comments or questions or?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm halfway through this book.
The surrender experiment.
Yeah, which we're reading for the advanced training.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
Oh, sure.
So our friends at home can hear you?
Sure. I can project my voice. So I was reading part on the ferry today as I was headed in, and it's a part where he's talking about what appear like coincidences, universal signs coming to us over and over again. He's talking about Baba Muktananda and being a siddha. And I have history with Siddha Yoga in LA, so I thought, I should look up Siddha Yoga Center in Vancouver on the ferry. Right up, I put it down after that chapter.
Right.
And I'm Googling it and looking through and I'm looking at their schedule, dozens of things, and way down, and Guru Maya's birthday celebration, in 2 months, and I go, I wonder what's on today. And it's Baba Muktananda's, this afternoon, we're doing a ceremony, celebration. I'm like, okay, there's one of those coincidences. But really feeling drawn today to come here. Last month I was away in training, so I wasn't able to make it. But this, I think, is a bigger coincidence to me. So for the first time ever, you probably heard me talk a lot in my trainings, in my classes, where I refer to the first 3 Yoga Sutras frequently. I talk about the 8 limbs of yoga frequently. And I talk about how, we do the asanas, we do introduce pranayama, there's pratyahara, dhyana, and dhyana. And I realized I never really talk about the yamas and yamas. So this past week, yesterday, I had prepared my class the night before. I thought, I'm going to open up this book after I just read it.
Yeah.
The section at the end about yamas and yamas, where my pink marks are. And I went through and I picked Swadhyaya, self-study.
Yeah.
And I spoke about how you can incorporate this into your practice on the mat. And then I read this quote on the next one, which I have marked here, about Swadhyaya, Swami Kripalvananji's quote on Swadhyaya and self-study. And I'm trying to understand what is the significance when life serves us coincidences like this. I've never talked about Swadhyaya in a class before. I talked about it yesterday, we come here and we're talking about Swadhyaya. So I want to understand what am I to make of this? That these are, to me, alignments, the universe saying, you're on the right path.
It sounds like you've answered your own question. Alignments,
So
you're on the right path. Alignments, you're on the right path. Yeah. Psst, go this way.
So I snickered when you started talking about Swadhyaya. I'm like, of course. What else would you be talking about today? When I was a teenager and coincidences happened, thinking of someone and the phone rings and they're there, I used to go, oh my God, that's so weird. Now people say to me, Jeff says all the time, isn't it weird when this happens? I said, no, that's the way the universe works.
That's right.
And I'm like,
That's
it's
right.
not weird.
It's not weird.
So what are the chances? I said, well, they're 100% because that was meant to happen. I love that saying. What are the chances that should happen? 100%.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Anyway.
So that beautiful, kind of what we're talking about, that contracted sense of self, that can't see, basically can't see, what is it called, the trees through the forest, or the forest through the trees. It's contracted, and so we can't see because it's layered and it's covered up. But as soon as we start to uncover through the the teachings and through this practice, or Swadhyaya, the observations, which you've been doing for several years, and as we kind of uncover that, we begin to see like what's being revealed to us is that everything is happening in perfect harmony. It appears like there's chaos, but through whose eyes is there chaos, right? So if it's the perception, and it's the identification. We want it to be a certain way, and then therefore it looks like it's chaos. But actually it's perfectly balanced in harmony. And chaos is actually a natural state too, right? So it's beautiful.
These are just reminders.
Yeah.
So that just reinforces
exactly.
Yes, you're walking right now.
Yes.
And so if we're not getting symbols like that, reminders, then it's sort of like, oh, well, maybe I'm gone off my natural path. That's the question, I guess.
Possibly, or we're caught in that contracted sense of self.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I would point to that more so, that it's not that we've gone off the path, or that there is even a path.
Yeah, right.
It's just that we can't see it because we're contracted. We've actually closed ourselves down based on the fact that we had an expectation, a demand, a projection, a judgment, a criticism, and therefore instead of being open and kind of knowing who we are and resting back in our true nature, we're actually leaning in and contracted and like, I'm stuck here, I can't get out of this. So that's why it's so important to come back to the practices, the sadhana, so that what you focus on expands. And so if you find yourself caught, you go to the books, you go to the scriptures, you sit in meditation, you listen to mantra, you chant mantra, pranayama. All of those techniques and practices will help move you away from that contracted sense of self so that you can rest back. That's why yoga nidra is so powerful, right? We get caught in those emotional kind of spirals, right? And if we just lay down for 30 minutes and listen to Gurudev, Kamini, John, anybody that guides us through yoga nidra, we begin to realize, oh, I'm not this. I'm actually that, right? And the more time we go there, the more often we can go, the longer we can stay. I mean, that's what that's pointing to, right?
Could it perhaps be like when you come to the fork in the road, you take it. I have.
That's awesome.
May I? It brings up you've said duality, and I'd like you to talk about duality.
Okay.
And what would a non-duality state be?
Okay. So I'm going to use a different term rather than non-duality, if that's okay. So duality would be they're opposing forces working against each other. So for example, two magnets that won't come together, they're actually resisting each other, kind of feeling, okay? Another example of duality would be, I don't like it this way, I like it this way. No, I actually don't like it this way, I like it this way. So it's like never finding harmony or balance would be duality, opposing forces, not working together. So then polarity, which I'm going to use as the term for non-duality, is opposing forces, but they're working together in harmony. So they're actually co-creative. It's a co-creation, it's a dance. So there's a harmonistic experience. And if I were to point to non-duality, there's also something that comes up that says non-duality is like there's no preference. It's like choiceless. There's no this or that. Okay, you've heard neti, not this, not that. That is more like non-duality. There's no preference. So in no preference, then that's perfectly balanced too, right? Okay. Was there another piece in there? Okay. Okay. Cool. I want to read that quote from Babaji. Do you know what page it is on?
Yes. My reading glasses. 109.
There's a couple cool quotes back here from Babaji.
Yeah, it was the lower one. I'll give
Yeah.
you one secret.
So Swadhyaya. So I'll read this to you. It says Swadhyaya, we're on page 109, Yoga of Relationships. Swadhyaya is the study of the self, leading to the deeper connection with our true self. Transformation and healing is founded on introspection, self-observation, where all unconscious beliefs, those are the ones that are the contracted self-image, are exposed in the light of consciousness, okay? So Swami Kripalu, or Bapaji, says, I will give you one secret. Whatever you seek in life, you will find through this practice. Just learn self-observation. By this practice, you will be able to master your mind, your intellect, and your ego. It is the surest and easiest way to progress. Watching, witness. Keep watching. And the more you establish yourself there as the witness, these contractions, these identifications will begin to fall away and dissolve, and the mind will become quieter. Life will become quieter. Everything will begin to like settle down. And it won't be boring. It won't be boring. You'll feel a sense of joyfulness that's just bubbling there. That's always been there, but you couldn't see it. We can't see it when we're contracted in that place of that contracted self-image. We can't see that natural state that is that joy, that natural state of meditation. Swadhyaya. Beautiful. There was another part in here that I was reading. So it really talks about, in this particular chapter, it really talks about the witness as part of us that is that non-judgmental, impersonal, right? And one of my favorite understandings over the past couple of years has been, if someone is being unkind or critical or judgmental or angry or whatever, right? It's not personal. It appears like you could go, oh my gosh, they're so mad at me, they're judging me, they're this or that. It's actually not about me. It's not personal to me. It's actually personal to them. They're caught in something. They're caught in that contracted sense of self. So it's personal to me when I'm the one who's angry, when I'm the one who's judging, when I'm the one who's criticizing, when I'm the one who's unkind, then that's personal to me. So I try to remember that. And when folks come to me and, they share things with me and they say, well, this is happening, or this is happening, or this is happening, I just remind them, it's not personal to you. That is not personal to you. That is personal to that person. They're caught in something. So they're personalizing it. When it's personal to me, and this is actually not completely true either, but when it's personal, it feels like that person is kind, they're loving, they're open, they're considerate. That feels more personal to me. And even that isn't true because it's still impersonal if you're really resting back as the witness, not choosing for or against. However, you can start to see a little more clearly in those moments when someone's judging, criticizing, reactive, entrenched, they're angry. It's not personal it's personal to them, or vice versa. If I'm there, it's personal to me. However, if they're kind or they're loving, compassionate, engaged, open, it is personal because there's that open exchange of energy and love that is that natural state that we've been pointing to since the beginning of our satsang. Devaki.
That energy piece is something that's just clicked for me recently. And just being in those examples of relationship with people where they are projecting their contractedness. And where it used to feel hurtful.
Right.
Now with this awareness of the mirror which actually is it goes two ways to me. It seems to go two ways, because it's the mirror of what is arising in me, and then me being the mirror for what's arising in them. But to come back to the energy piece, I'm going to try and stay focused on that. When that shifted, there wasn't the same kind of energy depletion.
That's right.
That's how I felt it in the body. It was like, oh, I don't feel depleted. I didn't feel, so it started by, I don't feel depleted. And then from there it progressed to, oh, I actually don't feel depleted. Oh, and I don't feel hit. And that was a huge piece, that energy piece. Because then you're just paying attention to the energy. You're not paying attention to what's being projected.
What's being said.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not paying attention to the words.
The labels.
Yeah, and you're not paying attention to the energy outside of yourself.
Exactly.
You're paying attention to the energy within yourself.
Exactly. Swadhyaya. Yeah. So through pratyahara, right?
Yes.
So pulling your attention off of whatever's happening outside, or actually what we perceive as happening outside, pull the attention off of that which you don't want to focus on, and put your attention on what you want to focus on. And then that grows and becomes more established, right?
Yes.
And then that energy then is no longer being, our sense of it being like falling out through a sieve, but actually being kind of contained in a sense, and actually growing and magnifying and amplifying, right?
Yes.
Which then gives us more stability, more capacity.
Yes. It's like the energy then actually, instead of shaking or like a lot of movement, it becomes still. And that still energy sort of is the capacity. It kind of is the container. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And some people might still have that vibration, but instead of having identification around, this isn't okay, I don't want to feel this, there's something wrong with me, it's got to stop, they're actually allowing that vibration to come through, and eventually it stops, right? It eventually passes. But there's not that contraction around, I don't want this anymore. Or even that happens sometimes, but again, that's human nature. And the realization is through repetition. So the more we realize, that's not me, even this vibration is not me, time and time again, the more we rest back in that expansive, natural state of meditation. So you just keep pointing there, and you keep putting your attention there. And it's through that self-observation that's like, oh, noticing, oh, look at that, I'm angry. Oh, look at that, I'm happy. It's the same. There's a non-duality around it. There's no preference. It's neither this nor that. Is that making sense? You good, Robin?
Question.
You do, I can see it. I was like, I can totally see it. Let's hear it.
So do people vibrate, or is the vibration, do people just vibrate at a different frequency? Or is that just static energy, or less calm? Like I get energy. And then I get kind of calm energy, and I find there's certain people, like I can almost feel that they're vibrating at a different frequency. And I'm curious about that.
Well, I can't answer that question. However, it sounds like you answered the question from your own sensitivity, you sense a different vibratory impact on you when various folks are coming into your like auric field. So in Ayurveda, there are different body types, different doshas, right? Everybody has a nervous system, and we're all wired slightly differently how that nervous system works, right? In terms of the electrical current, right? So it's possible that someone who is kapha may have a calmer electrical system. I don't know for sure, but it's possible. It's possible someone who's vata has a more sensitive, because they're movement, right? They're all about movement. So they may have a more sensitive electrical system. So if someone who's vata comes into your field, you might be more sensitive to them, for example, and less sensitive to someone who's kapha. Or it could also be depending on, it could be also dependent on, you know, where that person is in themselves, right? So someone may have a lot of energy in their body, but they may feel really grounded in that and established in that. And that might not impact you in the same way as increasing your vibratory impact, but it might actually, you will feel it, but it's in a different way. Where someone who is has a lot of energy in their body, but it's not, I don't want to say established or sustained, but I want to say it's still quite, what's the word I'm looking, what's the word? Kind of reactive, okay? Kind of, yeah, it's kind of reactive. That's going to have a different impact, right? And we're energetic beings, so we do feel each other, right? We do.
Yeah, so we basically have different energy, or
Right.
vibrate at different frequencies.
That's
depending
right.
On numerous.
All kinds of scenarios, all kinds of situations. And remember that mind is more subtle than the prana. So what's going on in someone's mind is going to have an impact on their prana, right? So if the mind is very peaceful and calm, that's going to impact their prana. Their mind is very kind of contracted, entangled, that's going to impact their prana. And the more we put our attention on prana, in terms of knowing the prana is that effectively returns to source, right? That keeps us connected to source. The more we keep our attention there, and we actually, through the yogic practices, magnify, amplify that pranic body, okay, which is all what the Iron method is about. Amrit is all about energy. The more we amplify and magnify the prana body, then mind is no longer layered over top of prana. It begins to become more balanced, and then prana begins to become stronger than mind. So those signs that we see, that then become more natural. It's like, oh, psst, go this way. It's like, that is prana. That's like the energy, universal prana, pointing in a direction. And mind is kind of like, we've dropped the mind, we've learned to dissolve the mind has been purified, we're not as entangled in the mind stuff, we're not in this contracted sense of self, so therefore we're listening to prana. We're listening to that magnification and universal prana, that connection. And so that actually points to that natural state again, right? That natural state of meditation. And we were talking again earlier about how 10,000 years ago, the ancients, that natural state of meditation was a very familiar part of their existence. It wasn't, they weren't caught, going, I'm only sleeping, I'm only dreaming, I'm only waking. They knew that natural state of meditation. Is that making sense? I might have gotten off track a little bit there. Okay.
And just on that, perhaps, we are not who we are because we carry the breath of our grandmothers and our grandfathers, and they reacted. We're not far removed from our great-grandmother, great-grandfather. It's we are them. And when they had reactions, they reacted in that moment in that way. And And so now we have those reactions within us, and it's all new now. So we really don't have a choice how we react in some ways.
You're right. It's pre-programmed. It's like pre-programmed, and it can be something that we learn environmentally or culturally from our ancestors. It can also be cellular, right? So especially it's in our cellular DNA. It's passed down through our exactly
Evolution.
Right.
So yeah.
So we can still through this process of Swadhyaya, we begin to recognize those reactions are not us, and then we can consciously choose in that moment, are we going to lean into that reaction and be immersed in that reaction and be immersed in that contracted sense of self and continue to propagate that who we are not, or are we going to rest back, make a different choice, and see what unfolds? Devaki, you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, I was just coming back to you were talking about the vibrations. And it is really interesting that, yes, you can experience all different vibrations, but when we chant Om together, that's the vibratory field that we all go back to.
It's home.
It's home. So it doesn't seem to matter who we are or what dosha we have or what
That's
vibration we're working on, what's
Yeah.
happening. When we sit together and we chant Om, that's one of the most powerful ways, along with the breath, to just drop back into who we really are.
It's like a tuning fork.
It is,
Yeah. It's a reset. Total reset.
Yeah, it's just so.
Do you recall the meditation with Padma? Were you Padma? Yeah. There was a question around, can everybody in this room be on the same frequency? Do you remember that
Yeah.
question from somebody?
What did she say?
And she said yes.
Yeah, she did.
Because I was like,
Yeah, she didn't really hesitate. It was like,
no, she was like, yeah.
so,
And she basically said, I'm holding her.
Yes, she did say that. She was holding that.
yeah.
You know, which was-
Over 20 years ago, I had an experience. I used to ride the bus a lot in Vancouver to and from work. And I don't know if any of you have traveled on the buses during rush hour. They're busy. Like you're like standing like shoulder to shoulder with people. And I remember on occasion sometimes standing, this way and someone's behind you, and skin touches and feeling like there's this sense of calmness. But what struck me is I remember a very specific point with another time someone brushed up against me and it felt like an electric shock. Exactly. That was sort of my reaction. Like,
Just fighting.
and I recognized, okay, well, what's going on with me? In retrospect, I felt like I was neutral in both instances. And I remember sharing this with someone once, and they said, oh, you didn't find them attractive. I'm like, I didn't see these people. They're behind me. Like, it's just so crowded. You don't really see it. So to me, it had nothing to do with my visual preferences or anything like that. So that was my sense that people do emit some sort of energy for sure. And with some, we might have a
Yeah,
friction,
but
and with others, it just sort of melds.
like I can tell when someone's really off.
Yeah.
I can feel it. When their energy is just like,
Not compatible with ours.
no.
And they
just
might be
like-
compatible with others, and
No.
different other people.
It's
It's
also
like psychologically
Oh, I
or
see what
whatever,
you're
like
saying.
there's something going on that's it's just like way bigger.
Okay.
And the interesting piece is that coming back to the more we establish ourselves as, as who we truly are and that true nature, the more we establish ourselves there, then those other folks that are, whatever's going on for them and they're in that contracted sense of self, we become that kind of center point, and that steady presence that we are then will radiate out and will have a impact on them too. Not that we're trying to make something, do something, have an impact on someone, but just being in ourself. Like Padma said, she's the one who's holding that. She was actually holding herself, in that steady presence. So that had an impact on all of us. She allowed herself to be in that space, living in that space. So the more each of us live in that space, that's how that radiates outward. No. Leslie, did you have something you wanted to say?
I did actually.
Okay.
With John, with you saying that all these things are pointing to come here, I came with a question, and this entire satsang has completely answered it.
Great!
I was like, okay, did I tell you?
That's
Did I
awesome.
message you?
I love when that happens.
So it's perfect alignment. But I do have one question about how, if you're in the moment and there's people, family, loved ones that have just such a negative energy, that like to complain a lot, that like to, oh, woe is me a lot, and all this stuff. How do you, like it said, like, sorry, with you saying pull back, sit back, and witness, and mirror, and all these things, I'm like, this is brilliant, this is answering the question. But how do you do that in that moment? Okay, there's two questions to this. One, how do you do that in the moment? Like, come inside. I guess I'm going to answer, probably just go back to your breath while these people are in your space. And if you've noticed these people are consistently what was me, do you stop hanging out with them, or do you just be the loving presence? I probably just answered the question, like, because you just can't like push these humans away because they're your close people, right? Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
So what I hear you saying is that there's some people in your life who are complaining and they're communicating, and it's rubbing you. You feel like a little bit of a rub around it, and not really sure how to be with them while that's happening. Do you pull back yourself? So disengage. Is that what you do? How do you be a loving presence? Should you try to help them in some way? So they don't know that they're caught. Probably. They might, but they're caught. Either way, they're caught.
It's very obvious.
Okay, they're caught. And so that's okay, because embrace that too. That's their exploration of their own self. Whether it's a condensed self-image or contracted self-image or not, right? So you're just witnessing that. You're witnessing, oh, look, there's this moving through my awareness, okay? There's two people arguing, complaining, whatever, through my awareness. Now, if I reject that, then I'm rejecting something of myself that I don't want to see. So if I push it away, oh God, I really don't want to be around these people anymore because, it's actually showing me something in myself that I don't want to see. So there's that. So then, can you, like, imagine, what came to me was this vision of, and maybe a memory, of being in the middle of Delhi, and old Delhi, we'll say, where everything is really tight, and there's people everywhere, and there's all kinds of debris on the ground, and there's electrical lines hanging, and it's just absolute mayhem, right? Just absolute mayhem. So I could clean all that up, right? I could fix it all up, tighten up all the things, and put all the trash away and everything, get all the people to be quiet, sit in your corners, or I could just let go. So what makes more sense?
I'm laughing because you know me so well. Yeah.
You just let go.
Let go.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you find yourself in reaction, this was the last piece, if you find yourself kind of past your edge, somewhere where you can't relax, where you're actually in reaction, then you would tend to, because that's self-observation, you would tend to yourself and you go, okay, I need to step back, maybe remove myself from the situation right now, go to the bathroom. It's a brilliant place to go and meditate. Go to the bathroom or just remove yourself from that situation until you can relax and return back to that edge or that threshold without being in reaction. And the more you allow yourself to be at that threshold, that edge, with and not going into reaction, the greater you'll be, you'll expand that capacity to be with that. Until eventually it's no longer disturbance. It won't be a disturbance, right?
And then you become the loving presence.
Well, you already are the loving presence. It's already that. You're that already. You've never not been that. but you become more established in knowing that's who you are, right? And so those disturbances, and I'm not saying that there'll never be a disturbance. I mean, Swami Kripalu, he met lots of disturbances and had to make adjustments in his life because he, you know, as he went through his sadhana, he had to make lots of different, and many yoga masters the same, like they have to back away from those disturbances because they are, they're not ready for them yet. So they have to go deeper into sadhana, move away from the edge, go back into the techniques and the tools of yoga, and grow their established in nature, knowing that established nature of meditation, and then those disturbances are less of a disturbance. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Great.
Well,
Yay!
Where's the distinction between just remaining there, being really present,
Mhm.
and what some scriptures say was that affiliate with like-minded people, and you might actually
Mhm.
move away from
Right.
those. So where does that
Yeah.
become? I'm avoiding that,
Right.
as opposed to no, I'm choosing not to
Right.
honor this.
Right.
Is there? You see the
I
distinction?
totally see it. And if you recall when we had the darshan with Gurudev a couple weeks or a week ago, I guess it was, Bodhi asked that question to him, and the answer was the habits. It's the habits that we have that are familiar. So we end up finding kind of the rub when our habits start to change. So if we're used to going to listen to music with a group of friends, and then we find that going to listen to music with this group of friends and having a glass of wine and, you know, doesn't really, staying up late, doesn't really feel like it fits anymore because my habits are changing. It's not the friends that I don't like them, it's just my habits are changing. So I can still love the friends and maybe not spend as much time with them in that environment, but my habits have shifted. And it's possible over the course of time that as my habits change and their habits change or don't change, that we maybe have less in common, so our time together is different. And then just naturally things shift and evolve from there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Isn't this fun?
It's amazing.
You guys having fun out there? We're having fun here. Yeah.
I did come with a question. I just
Another
wanted to tag
question.
on
You
it.
guys are so good.
And
And I have a question someone sent me. So.
it's somewhat related to this book and what he's experiencing about the idea of surrendering, accepting what the universe gives us. That whole, this way, come this way. You know, when he talks about, you know, he didn't want to teach. And you're like, I need you to teach. He's like, okay, they're asking me, I'll do it. And he kind of goes to an extreme that maybe not many people are going to do, which is to just accept everything that comes his way. You know, to the extreme of saying, give away all your money, for example.
Right.
Well, most people wouldn't do that. He might. In fact, he did. But I'm thinking, so I thought of an outlandish, ridiculous scenario. Like if someone came up to him and said, you need to have a sex change, you know. And it's sort of like, well, someone said it, so I should do it. I mean, where do we draw the line between surrendering to what is presented to us and, you know, that feels right for our path? And it's like, that doesn't feel right. Because he effectively says, I was just going to accept anything that was coming at me.
He was going to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
Mickey
So
was
I
going
guess
to say
that's
yes
why I
to
thought something
everything.
ridiculous, like that. That someone would hold it, and that's where I'm drawing the line. Like,
So that's, all of that is subjective, right? So where you're going right now is with your imagination into a subjective place. And
you know this?
yes, I do. And there's no way we could ever answer that because
No.
even if that happened, it's still in the future and it's subjective. So
It's a fork in the road.
it's a fork in there. So, but on that note, I would just scale it back to you and then
Well,
begin to play with this in your own life and see what happens. When someone presents something to you like, I don't know, let's have a cinnamon bun. Instead of saying, oh no, I can't have a cinnamon bun because I don't eat gluten, you could say, okay, let's.
Okay.
Just try it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And just little baby steps, right? Little baby steps. And just see. And what you're watching for is, again, that edge, that place where the tendency to react meets that place of relaxation. And so that's kind of what you're watching for, right? And I can't say what Mickey was up to or not up to, or if he was past his edge all the time. I have no idea. But for you, just kind of walking that threshold, saying, okay, where is that place where I can relax and not react? That intersection place where I can say yes and still be at ease and feel natural and established. Yeah. And maybe not habitual, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I have a question. Let's see. So this came via text. So one of our sisters was not able to come tonight, and so she said, I have a question. Can I send it to you? I said, please send it to me. So then I had to write it from my phone, because my phone is actually right now recording this. So I hope that I can read my writing. So the question is, it's around the feeling or the geography or the place that makes home, okay? So the question is, what is home? So this sounds like an investigation that this particular sister is wanting to dissect. So what path does it follow? Does home have a shape or a place or a structure? Or is it just a spiritual, physical connection to source? And does it have more value, or is it valued in a more tangible way with ritual, ceremony, and decoration? So what is home? So when I read this, the first thing that jumped out at me was, well, home is where the heart is, right? So home is really where your heart is. And where is your heart?
The center of your being.
The center of your physical being, exactly, but also it's where love is. Right? It's that love. So if home is where the heart is, and the heart is held by those that we love, especially our children, you know, that unconditional love, or our parents, that unconditional love that we have for our family members, regardless how crazy we think they are or they think we are, right? That unconditional love, home is where the heart is. So that's where I would find myself established in that. And then we have heard the term love being another term that we can use for the divine, consciousness, awareness, God, source, right? So then if home is where the heart is, then the heart is that constant divinity. And that constant divinity, we can see it anywhere. We can see it anywhere we look, because it's not out there, it's actually here. And my sense is also that, so then we have that connection to source, which is what I pointed to with Gurudev when he said, when we're in a place of judgment, when we're in a place of that contracted sense of self, we're cutting ourselves off from that connection to source. We're forgetting. So when we remember that, when we come back in that Swadhyaya, we come back to source, come back to our true self, our true nature, abide in that knowing of source, love, consciousness, divinity, our true essence, that meditation, that natural state of meditation, then we can honor that knowing so that we don't forget with ritual, with puja, with decorations, with whatever, however we want to anoint or dress up that so that we don't forget. So then we look outside of ourselves, we see it and go, oh, that's love, I forgot, and then I can come back. Does that make sense? Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
Well, I think it's just the same as what you were saying, but I've had the moments of being in different places in the world on my own and having such a beautiful feeling of home. So I was trying to touch back of what was I feeling in those times to kind of bring that feeling about. And it was really, I realized it was exactly what you were saying, is I was in touch with my heart, where it was maybe because I felt loved by another, or it was just with myself, connected to myself, connected to my heart, and therefore connected to source.
Beautiful.
And that can be anywhere, and I just love how that all kind of
That was really beautiful.
came together with what you were saying,
Yeah.
and I could, just to be able to articulate that, it's really special.
I just saw this open heart. This is open heart, like that open heart, that is home.
Yeah.
And that contracted sense of self is when we feel like we're lost.
Yeah.
That we don't know,
Not belonging.
not belonging, not included, not belonging, not valued, not acknowledged, right? Not
Yeah.
seen.
Mm-hmm.
So when we are open in our own heart, then we feel seen, heard, acknowledged, valued, not from the other, but from ourselves, because we're open to ourselves. Devaki?
But it's just such a huge piece that all the love and acceptance that we're looking for outside of ourselves is actually really just a reminder to turn back inside again,
Yes.
back into our heart.
Yes.
Because that's home, that's who we are. And when we do that, then we see through the eyes of love, and we hear through the ears of love, and we
Right.
experience.
Reminds me of a beautiful poem by Swami Kripalu about break your heart no longer.
I read that yesterday.
Yeah.
I read it to the group at the end of the class.
Did you, John? John, you're so on top of it.
He's still on fire.
Let's see if I can find it. I don't know if it's in here. Oh, it might be at the back page, actually.
It's the t-shirt.
It's the t-shirt.
It's the t-shirt. That's right. It's the beloved Bapaji t-shirt. See if you can find it. I don't know where it is, actually. But it's in a book, one of them.
It's in here for sure.
Okay.
I read it from here yesterday.
All right, so John's going to look for it. And I'll look here in Yoga of Relationships, see if there's anything else that I wanted to point to. Oh, here we have it.
It's right here on page.
You found it?
Yeah, 75?
Okay.
No,
It's,
is that, can you make that number? Maybe 78.
I got my glasses.
You have glasses on, John.
I know, but they're reading glasses.
Well,
But
so
it
read.
needs
Here it
proper
is.
light.
It's on page 75.
5. It is
75, Yoga of Relationships.
Mhm.
Okay. So what you just said reminds me of this poem. And it's actually under the forgiveness chapter. And another interesting thing Gurudev said was, and our last darshan that we posted for you, I believe we posted it, was that there's no need to forgive. Forgiveness means that there was something that went wrong. There's that there's something wrong. And that again is that contracted sense of self. So, and if there's a need for forgiveness, that means that there was a judgment. There was some judgment. And again, if there was a judgment, there's coming from that contracted sense of self. So this is what Bapaji says. Bapaji, Swami Kripalavandanji says, "My beloved child, break your heart no longer. Each time you judge yourself, you break your own heart. You stop feeding on love, which is the wellspring of your vitality. The time has come, your time to live, to celebrate and see the goodness that you are. You, my child, are divine. You are pure. You are sublimely free. You are God in disguise, and you are always perfectly safe. Do not fight the dark. Just turn on the light. Let go and breathe into the goodness that you are." Jai Bapaji. So I feel that if there's no more questions, maybe we can end with that tonight. And I invite you to continue reading through this chapter of self-awareness. There is a 5-step process for Swadhyaya. But mostly what we talked about are all pointers. So we'll just sit together for just 3 or 4 minutes. My beloved child, break your heart no longer. Take it inside. Jai Babaji, Jai Dadaji, Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Gurudev, Jai Kamaniji. This lineage of masters that have handed down the teachings all the way to us. May the spirit be victorious. Jai Bhagwan. Thank you for joining us tonight. Have a beautiful, blessed night. Jai Bhagwan.